Hi everyone, my name is Jasmine Khelil, and today I'll be speaking about my project that I've been doing for the last 4 months in the Palestinian refugee camps in the Middle East. So basically, I worked with the Amman Center for Human Rights Studies. This is a nonprofit organization that specifically focuses on different human rights reports. For example, one of them that I was working with was the Palestine Monitor. It's a report on the violations, the death, and the destruction of infrastructure in the West Bank, Gaza, as well as the Palestinian refugee camps in the Middle East. What my task was basically direct interviews and conversations with Palestinian refugees that have been displaced since 1948, which is the establishment of the State of Israel, as well as a mass displacement and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people. Oral testimony has become incredibly important within human rights frameworks. It's specifically to kind of narrow the gap down between human rights reports that explain the violations and also the oral testimonies that actually explain the direct effect of what these Palestinian refugees are seeing in a daily life. There's very much a difference between what kind of the Palestine Monitor and their reports and their briefs kind of say about the violations against the Palestinian people. The daily consequences of these violations of human rights are very different. Specifically, the Palestinian experience of being a refugee is incredibly different based on the context that they're residing in. So the Amman Center is an independent NGO. They're based in Amman, but they do a lot of work in the West Bank, in Lebanon, and kind of across the Arab world. So yeah, they aim at strengthening civil society within Jordan, but also as well as like across the Arab world, even in North Africa, with now the kind of upcoming of authoritarian regimes again. These are just some of the priorities of the Amman Center, and I think it's very important to note there's one of them that is the right to speak, which is one of the major violations for Palestinian people at the moment, in the political moment that we are living in today, even on this NYU campus. Opposing a genocide has been followed by disciplinary hearings, and I hope that we can all come to a conclusion where we see the importance of a right to speak from Palestinian refugees residing in Lebanon and Jordan to Palestinians living in New York. So kind of a background information on my project. It kind of started with 1948, the Nakba, which is the creation of the State of Israel, but also the catastrophe and the mass displacement of Palestinian people. This led to this displacement of 750,000 Palestinians, mostly to Jordan, to Lebanon, but also to other countries. Some of them were internally displaced within the occupied territories and became basically part of the State of Israel, but are still facing discrimination on a daily basis under the system. So yeah, Palestinians kind of became refugees either within occupied Palestine or in exile, like you can see in the refugee camps in Lebanon and Jordan. UNRWA has become responsible for the education and the human development of these Palestinian refugees. So a lot of what I was seeing in the project was the role of UNRWA within the refugee camps that has been facing a crisis, specifically in the last 2 years of genocide, where the funding cuts have directly affected the lives of Palestinian refugees. They were already going through displacements upon displacements, violations of human rights, unable to really access even clean water or food or social rights, specifically in Lebanon, where Palestinian refugees, for example, cannot work in Lebanese society. At least some jobs they cannot work at. So the research was kind of, the documentary that I've made is part of the project, and that kind of covers the oral testimonies of Palestinian refugees that I've interviewed. It focuses mostly on the daily dangers inside the camps. So for example, in a lot of Palestinian refugee camps, it's overcrowded. So for example, electricity is a huge problem. And sometimes when there's, for example, water, people get electrocuted by the electricity falling down into the water. This is just one example of the major violations of human rights that are faced by Palestinian refugees. And I think it's important to note that these are generations upon generations of Palestinian people. We're speaking about the generation of 48 that has been, first of all, displaced from their homeland, Palestine, the second generation that has seen massacres in the Lebanese civil war, and now the generation that has seen probably the 2006 war and the genocide that we're facing today. So these are just screenshots of the documentary project that I've made. This was a protest. This is also from a protest. And this is, for example, from the generation of the Nakba. This woman has survived the Nakba in 1948 and ended up establishing her life in a refugee camp. My conclusions are kind of as follows. I think it's very important that we keep on pressing on the right of return of Palestinian refugees. This is one of the biggest demands that has been overlooked, specifically in the past 2 years of this genocide. The main demand is not improving social rights. It's a return to the homeland. Thank you.